The stars shone like diamonds against the black void as the USS Defiance glided toward the massive space station. The ship was Earth's pride, sleek, powerful, and carrying humanity's hopes on its first official visit to the Galactic Council. Admiral John Hayes stood on the bridge, his weathered face calm despite the weight on his shoulders. At 53, with gray streaking his dark hair, he had seen much in his years of service, but nothing compared to this mission. "Sir, we're receiving docking instructions," said Lieutenant Susan Miller. Her young face was serious as her fingers moved across the glowing control panel. Hayes nodded. "Bring us in, Lieutenant, nice and steady." The crew worked in focused silence. They all knew what was at stake. After humans had discovered faster-than-light travel in 2056, they had spent a century exploring nearby star systems. They had built colonies on 11 planets and made peaceful contact with 3 alien species. But the Galactic Council, the Union of 27 Advanced Civilizations, had ignored Earth until now. "Admiral," called Communications Officer Greg Peters, "Ambassador Foster is asking if you'll join the landing party. Tell her I'm on my way." Hayes left the bridge and walked through the ship's corridors to the main airlock. There he found the 3 other members of the diplomatic team preparing to board the station. Ambassador Diane Foster looked up as he entered. At 61, she was the most experienced diplomat Earth had. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her blue eyes showed both excitement and worry. "John, good. We should go over the plan one more time," she said. Beside her, Dr. Alan Carter checked his data tablet. The xenobiologist was younger than the others, barely 40, with kind eyes behind simple glasses. "I've studied every public file on the council races," he said. "But I suspect we're in for some surprises." Commander Paul Wright stood slightly apart, his military posture perfect. As head of security, the muscular officer seemed ready for trouble, his hand never far from his side. Just remember we're in their house now. We play by their rules until we can't." Hayes looked at his team. "We've waited 100 years for this chance. Earth is counting on us to make a good first impression and to secure our place among the stars. Let's not let them down." The airlock doors opened with a soft hiss. The human delegation stepped onto the Galactic Council station for the first time. A group of aliens waited for them. The leader was clearly from the Elduran species, tall and willowy with pale blue skin and 4 arms. This was Station Director Kiv, according to their briefing materials. "Welcome to Nexus Station," said Kiv in perfect English. "I am to escort you to the council chambers. They have granted you 15 minutes of their time." Foster frowned. The communication mentioned a formal reception and detailed discussions. Kiv's large eyes blinked slowly. "Plans change. The council is very busy. You should be grateful for any time at all." The humans exchanged glances but said nothing as they followed Kiv through the station. The corridors were filled with aliens of different shapes, sizes, and colors. Many stopped to stare at the humans, some pointing and making sounds that seemed like laughter. "Is something amusing?" Wright asked their guide. "You are the first humans most have seen in person," Kiv replied. "Your appearance is interesting to many species." After a long walk through increasingly grand passageways, they reached an enormous door carved with symbols from dozens of languages. "The council chamber," Kiv announced. "You will speak only when spoken to. You will not approach the central platform without permission. You will address all council members by their proper titles." The Eldarin looked down at them. "Do you understand these simple instructions, or should I repeat them?" Hayes felt his jaw tighten at the condescending tone, but Foster smoothly replied, "We understand perfectly, Director Kiv. Thank you for your guidance." The massive doors slid open, revealing a chamber larger than any room the humans had ever seen. It was shaped like a bowl, with rising tiers of seats holding hundreds of alien representatives. At the center was a raised platform where 7 beings sat in ornate chairs. As they walked in, Hayes noticed the chamber growing quieter, then filling with a different sound, chittering, warbling, and clicking noises that didn't need translation. The aliens were laughing at them, Director Kiv announced in a booming voice. High Council, I present the delegation from Earth seeking recognition and observer status. The central figure on the platform rose. This was High Elder Zareth of the Elduran Imperium, the Council's current leader. Taller than Kiv and dressed in flowing robes of shimmering material, Zareth's 4 arms were decorated with gleaming metal bands. The representatives from Earth may approach, Zareth called out, voice carrying easily across the huge space. More alien laughter rippled through the chamber. Foster stepped forward confidently, her head held high. Honorable High Elder Zareth and esteemed members of the Galactic Council, we bring greetings from Earth and all humanity. We thank you for this historic opportunity and hope this meeting marks the beginning of peaceful cooperation between Earth and the Galactic Council. Zareth's face showed an expression the humans couldn't quite read. Indeed. We have reviewed your species application for observer status. It makes for interesting reading. More laughter echoed from the gathered aliens. Your species has only recently mastered basic faster-than-light travel, Zareth continued. You've settled just a handful of planets. Your technology is, let us say, quaint, and your physical form is remarkably fragile. Dr. Carter tensed beside Foster, but she placed a hand on his arm to calm him. Nevertheless, Zareth said, the Council has voted to grant humanity limited provisional observer status. You may establish a small embassy on the lower levels of this station, Section D12, I believe it is. A smaller alien with green scales and multiple eyes leaned toward Zareth. Isn't D12 the old storage area near waste processing? Indeed, Counselor Threk. We thought the humans would appreciate being somewhere useful. This brought the loudest laughter yet. For the next hour, the humans stood before the Council as their questions were ignored or mocked. When Dr. Carter tried to share information about Earth's biodiversity, a large insectoid counselor interrupted. Yes, Earthling. Your planet has many simple life forms. Our worlds have evolved truly advanced species. Perhaps in another 1,000,000 years, your kind might develop properly. When Commander Wright mentioned Earth's defense capabilities, hoping to establish military cooperation, the chamber erupted in what could only be described as hysterical laughter. The human thinks their weapons are worth discussing, hooted a floating jellyfish-like being. Next, they'll offer to protect us with their mighty spears and arrows. After what felt like an eternity of humiliation, they were finally dismissed with instructions to find their embassy in the station's lower levels. A junior station worker was assigned to guide them. Their new guide was from a species they hadn't seen before, short with gray skin and large, sad-looking eyes. Follow me, humans. D12 is not so bad. We cleaned out most of the waste containers last cycle. The embassy turned out to be a large storage room with flickering lights and the faint smell of chemicals. Metal crates had been pushed against walls to make space, and a few mismatched pieces of furniture had been added as an afterthought. When their guide left, Commander Wright slammed his fist against a wall. They're treating us like children. Worse, like pets. That's exactly what they think we are, Dr. Carter said quietly. I noticed at least 15 different biological adaptations among the Council species that they believe make them superior. Enhanced healing, protective outer shells, natural neural networks. Ambassador Foster sank into a chair that was clearly designed for a different body shape. We knew this might be difficult, but I never expected such open mockery. Admiral Hayes remained silent for a long moment, looking out a small, dirty window at the vastness of space. Finally, he turned to face his team. We came here seeking allies and knowledge, he said, voice low and determined. Instead, we found that humans are the joke of the galaxy. He looked at each of them. Contact Earth. The President needs to know what we're dealing with. And what exactly are we dealing with, John? Foster asked, eyes tired but still sharp. Hayes's expression hardened, a small smile forming on his lips. A test, Diane. One humanity has faced many times before. Being underestimated. Outside their small window, countless stars shone in the darkness. Somewhere out there was Earth, waiting to hear what its first ambassadors had found. And soon, Very soon, those who laughed would learn what humans did best, proving others wrong. 6 months passed slowly in the tiny human embassy on Nexus Station. Ambassador Diane Foster had done her best to make the storage room look more like a proper diplomatic office. They had added Earth-made furniture, installed better lights, and hung a large flag of Earth on the cleanest wall. Still, it remained clear that the Council didn't take humans seriously. Most days, Foster's requests for meetings were ignored. When Council members did agree to see her, they treated her like a curious pet rather than a representative of a sovereign planet. "It's like talking to a brick wall," she told Admiral Hayes during their weekly video call. "They smile and nod, then do exactly what they plan to do anyway." On the screen, Hayes looked tired. Back on Earth, leaders argued constantly about what to do. Some wanted to leave Council space completely and focus on their own colonies. Others insisted they keep trying to gain respect. "The President still believes we need to be patient," Hayes said. "But patience is running out. How much longer can we let them treat us this way?" Before Foster could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors outside the embassy. She had never heard this alarm before. "Something's happening," she told Hayes quickly. "I'll contact you when I know more." Foster hurried out of the embassy, following streams of aliens rushing toward the central levels. Emergency announcements played in several languages, including broken English. "All representatives to Council Chamber. Emergency situation." Repeat. "All representatives." When Foster reached the Council Chamber, it was in chaos. Aliens shouted over each other in dozens of languages. The translation systems struggled to keep up, creating a jumble of overlapping voices in her earpiece. High Elder. Zareth stood on the central platform, trying to restore order. Foster slipped into the human observer seat at the far back of the room and activated her data tablet to record everything. Finally, Zareth's voice boomed above the noise. "Silence! We must respond with unity." The chamber quieted, and Zareth continued. "As most of you now know, 3 border systems have been attacked by Krellvorn forces. Nexus 7, Eldrin Mining Colony 5, and the Threkian outpost at Barza have all reported heavy damage and casualties. Images appeared on the large screens around the chamber. Alien cities burning, ships destroyed, defense stations reduced to floating. Debris. "Impossible," bellowed Councillor Drex of the Vargon Collective, his armored exoskeleton making loud clicking sounds as he stood. "The Krellvorn are primitive raiders. They don't have technology that could defeat our defenses." A nervous-looking Elduran aide approached Zareth and whispered something. Zareth's forearms tightened at his sides. "New information confirms the Krellvorn are using an unknown weapon technology," Zareth announced. "It appears to disable our shield systems before their main attack." The chamber erupted again, fear replacing anger in many voices. Foster watched carefully, noting how quickly the mighty council had descended into confusion. These were the same beings who had laughed at humans for being primitive. After several minutes of listening, Foster made a decision. She pressed the request to speak button on her console, something no human had done during a full council session before. The system automatically placed her name at the bottom of a long list of speakers. She settled in to wait, recording notes about everything she heard. The council debated for hours. Some wanted to send their entire fleet to crush the Krellvorn. Others feared it was a trap to leave core worlds undefended. No clear plan emerged, just arguments and blame. To Foster's surprise, Zareth finally called on her near the end of the session. "The human observer wishes to speak. Let us hear what Earth has to say about matters it cannot possibly understand." Foster stood, ignoring the dismissive tone. "Thank you, High Elder. Earth has extensive experience with asymmetric warfare, situations where a seemingly weaker force finds ways to defeat stronger opponents." "Your species still fights among itself," interrupted a reptilian counselor. "What? Could you possibly teach us about advanced warfare?" Foster remained calm. "It's precisely because we've had to overcome our own conflicts that we understand how aggressors think. Humanity has developed methods for rapidly responding to unexpected threats and adapting our defenses." "And what do you propose, Ambassador?" Zareth asked, a hint of mockery in his voice. I propose that Earth be allowed to send observers to your Defense Coordination Center, Foster said. Not as participants, but as students who might learn from watching superior species at work. This approach was carefully chosen. By presenting humans as humble learners, she avoided challenging the Council's pride directly. Several Council members nodded, seeing no harm in letting humans watch from the sidelines. After a brief discussion, Zareth agreed. Very well, one human observer may join the Defense Coordination Team, in a non-interference capacity only. Foster bowed slightly. Earth thanks the Council for this opportunity. As soon as the session ended, Foster rushed back to the embassy and contacted Admiral Hayes on a secure line. They've given us an opening, she said quickly. Small, but it's there. Hayes's face showed a grim smile. Good work, Diane. I'm sending Dr. Kate Rivera. She's our best shield technology expert. If this new weapon targets shields, she needs to see exactly how it works. The Council thinks we're coming to learn from them, Foster warned. And we will, Hayes said. But we'll also be looking for things they might miss. 3 days later, Dr. Rivera arrived at the station. She was younger than Foster expected, barely 35, with intense focus in her dark eyes and quick, precise movements. Ambassador Foster, thank you for arranging this, Rivera said as they walked toward the Defense Center. Admiral Hayes briefed me fully. I understand we're playing the part of respectful students? Foster nodded. For now, the Council races think their technology is far beyond ours. Let them keep thinking that while you see what you can learn. The Defense Coordination Center was massive, a cavernous room filled with holographic displays and hundreds of aliens working at various stations. They were assigned a small observation post at the back, where Rivera could watch but not participate. For 2 weeks, Rivera observed silently, taking careful notes as reports came in from the front lines. More Krell-Vorn attacks destroyed Council, ships and outposts. The new weapon continued to disable shields with ease, leaving defenders helpless. Meanwhile, Council experts argued constantly about how to respond. Each species insisted their approach was best, resulting in a jumble of competing strategies. Late one night, Rivera knocked on Foster's door, her eyes wide with excitement. I've figured it out, she said. The Krell-Vorn weapon isn't actually that advanced. It's just exploiting a basic weakness in Council shield designs. She spread diagrams across Foster's desk. Look here. Every Council race uses the same standardized shield frequency modulation. It's perfectly logical for peaceful cooperation, but it means they all share the same vulnerability. Foster studied the diagrams. Can it be fixed? Easily. Rivera nodded. We need to randomize the harmonic patterns. Our ships on Earth already use similar technology to prevent this exact kind of attack. Why haven't their experts seen this? Foster asked. Rivera shrugged. They're too specialized. Each race has experts in specific areas, but nobody looks at the whole system. Plus, they've never needed to, until now. Foster considered their options. If we tell them directly, they'll dismiss it as primitive human thinking. So we don't tell them directly, Rivera said with a smile. We ask the right questions and let them think they discovered it themselves. The next day, during a meeting of senior defense officials, Rivera raised her hand during a rare pause in the discussion. The Elduran commander-in-charge looked surprised but nodded for her to speak. I'm just a student here, Rivera began humbly. But I was wondering, have you considered that the shield frequency standardization might be the attack vector? The room fell silent. Then a senior Vargon engineer rushed to a console and began running simulations. By the ancestors, he muttered. The human might be right. Within hours, the entire approach changed. Council engineers developed a shield, modification based on Rivera's question, and prepared to test it on a single battle group. When that group successfully fought off a Krell-Vorn attack without a single casualty, the Council quickly implemented the changes across their combined fleet. But that evening, High Elder Zareth summoned Foster and Rivera to a private meeting. His usual condescension was notably absent. It seems, Zareth said carefully, that sometimes a fresh perspective has value. The Council acknowledges Earth's contribution to our defense efforts. It wasn't much, but it was the first time any council member had spoken to humans as equals. As they left the meeting, Foster squeezed Rivera's arm. "This is just the beginning," she said quietly. "They've stopped laughing, at least." Rivera nodded. Now they're wondering what else they might have missed about us. Back in their tiny embassy, they contacted Hayes with the news. His face showed satisfaction as Foster reported their progress. "Well, done, both of you," he said. "Keep pushing, but carefully. We don't need their love, just their respect." As the call ended, Foster looked out at the stars through their small window. For the first time since arriving at the station, she felt hope. Humans had taken their first real step toward being heard in the galaxy. 1 month after the shield modification saved the Council fleet, the human embassy moved to better quarters. No longer stuck in a storage room, Ambassador Foster and her team now occupied a proper diplomatic suite on the middle levels of Nexus Station. It wasn't in the prestigious upper rings where important species had their offices, but it was a clear improvement. "They're still watching us," Commander Wright said as he checked their new rooms for listening devices. "But now they're curious instead of just dismissive." Foster nodded. "We've been invited to more meetings in the past week than in the previous 6 months combined." The shield incident had changed how the Council viewed humans. Not dramatically. They were still treated as junior members at best. But the mockery had stopped. Now Council members studied humans with careful attention, as if trying to understand what else they might have missed. Dr. Alan Carter had benefited most from this change. As Earth's xenobiologist, he had requested access to biological data in the Council archives for months without success. Now, suddenly, his requests were approved. "They think I'm studying their biology to admire how superior they are," Carter told Foster with a slight smile. "But I'm finding something much more interesting." In his new lab space, Carter showed Foster and Wright what he had discovered. His screens displayed DNA patterns from various Council species, with certain sections highlighted. "Look at these markers," Carter pointed. "They appear in every Council race, just in different locations." Foster leaned closer. "What does that mean?" "At first I thought it was convergent evolution, different species developing similar traits independently," Carter explained. "But it's too precise, too consistent across 27 completely different species." Wright crossed his arms. "What are you saying, Doc?" Carter took a deep breath. "They were designed. All 27 Council races show clear signs of genetic engineering dating back roughly 1 million years." A heavy silence fell over the room. "Are you absolutely certain?" Foster finally asked. "I've run the analysis hundreds of times," Carter nodded. "These markers are artificial. They don't occur in natural evolution. Each Council species was engineered for specific traits, the Eldurans for their mental processing, the Vargans for physical strength, the Melosians for electromagnetic sensitivity, and so on." "By whom?" Wright asked. "Unknown," Carter replied. "But whoever did it selected specific evolutionary paths for each species and pushed them to their limits." Foster frowned. "And humans, do we have these markers?" "That's the most fascinating part," Carter said, eyes bright with excitement. "We don't. Human DNA shows no signs of this engineering. We evolved naturally through random mutation and natural selection." The implications stunned them all. The Council races weren't looking down on humanity because they were naturally superior. They had been artificially enhanced while humans remained natural. "We need to tell Admiral Hayes," Foster decided. "But carefully. If the Council learns what we've discovered before we understand what it means, they might see it as a threat," Wright finished. "Biological information this sensitive could be dangerous in the wrong hands." For the next 2 weeks, Carter continued his research while Foster and Wright maintained normal diplomatic activities. They sent encrypted reports to Earth, where scientists worked to verify Carter's findings independently. Then something unexpected happened that changed everything. A routine geological survey on Mars, led by a joint Human Council scientific team, discovered an unusual energy reading deep beneath the surface. When they excavated the site, they found an ancient facility unlike anything seen before. not human and not matching any known Council technology. Foster received an urgent message from Admiral Hayes. Get to Mars immediately. Something big has happened. Within a day, Foster, Carter, and Wright arrived at the Mars colony. Hayes met them at the landing pad, his face showing barely contained excitement. You won't believe what we've found, he said as their transport vehicle headed toward the excavation site. The facility is at least 1 million years old, but parts of it activated when our team entered. Activated? Carter asked. After 1 million years? Hayes nodded. And here's the strange part. It only responds to humans. Council representatives can't make it work at all. At the site, they descended into a massive underground complex. The architecture was elegant and fluid, with walls that seemed to shift subtly as they walked. Soft blue light came from everywhere and nowhere. In the central chamber, they found Lieutenant Frank Bennett, a junior officer with no special training, sitting at what appeared to be a control panel. Around him stood several frustrated council scientists. Show them, Lieutenant, Hayes ordered. Bennett placed his hand on a smooth section of the panel. Immediately, holographic displays appeared above it, showing star systems and flowing symbols. It recognized me as human, Bennett explained. Just asked me to think at it. He shrugged. I don't know how else to describe it. A tall Elduran scientist tried the same action, but nothing happened. We've had 20 different Council species attempt activation, he said. The technology responds only to human neural patterns. Over the next few days, more Council representatives arrived at Mars to witness this phenomenon. Foster noticed their changing attitudes, confusion, disbelief, and in some cases, growing respect. With Carter's help, they began translating the facility's data storage. It contained information from a species that called themselves the Precursors, the same species that had engineered all Council races. According to these records, Carter reported during a joint Human-Council briefing, the Precursors seeded the galaxy with genetically engineered intelligent species about 1 million years ago. The Council members shifted uncomfortably as Carter continued. Each species was designed for specific functions, specialized worker castes, essentially. The Eldurans for administration and planning, the Vargans for construction and defense, the Melosians for communication and sensing, and so on. And the humans? Asked Zareth, who had personally traveled to Mars when the news reached him. What was their designated function? Carter glanced at Foster, who nodded for him to continue. Earth was different, Carter said. It was designated as a control group, a planet where evolution would proceed naturally, producing beings with balanced capabilities rather than specialized extremes. The Council chamber erupted in voices, some angry, others fearful or confused. Foster watched as their worldview crumbled before her eyes. These beings who had looked down on humans as primitive now faced the reality that they were the artificial ones, created as specialized tools by an ancient, vanished civilization. Why would they do this? Demanded Counselor Drex. Create us, then disappear? No one had an answer until Lieutenant Bennett called from the control room. Something's happening. They rushed to find Bennett standing back from the controls, which were now operating themselves. Similar reports came in from across Council space. Other precursor facilities, previously dormant or unknown, had suddenly activated. A message appeared on every screen, in a language that translated itself into all present species' native tongues. It was simple but profound. The natural variant has achieved threshold. Initialization commencing. All eyes turned to the humans in the room. What did you do? Whispered Zareth, his usual confidence gone. Foster looked at Hayes, Carter, and the others, then back at the Council representatives. We didn't do anything, she said honestly. We simply existed as we are. Carter stepped forward. I think I understand. The precursors were running an experiment, testing whether specialized, engineered species would outperform naturally evolved ones. And by achieving faster-than-light travel while maintaining our adaptability and social cohesion, humanity passed some threshold they had established, Hayes added. As the implications sank in, The mood in the room shifted. The council members no longer looked at humans with condescension or even curiosity, but with something new, uncertainty and perhaps a touch of fear. "What happens now?" asked a Malosian representative, her voice barely audible. Foster looked at the message still glowing on the screen. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I think we're all about to find out." Outside the ancient facility, the Martian sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and red. Earth hung in the distance, a small blue dot. Somewhere out there, precursor technology was awakening across the galaxy, responding to humanity's achievement of some long-dormant trigger. After 1,000,000 years of silence, something was beginning. And humans, the natural variant, the control group, the balanced ones, stood at the center of it all. Strange events spread across council space in the days following the activation of the precursor message. Ancient structures, long thought to be natural formations or simple ruins, hummed to life on dozens of planets. Orbital platforms shifted positions. Artifacts in museums began emitting unusual energy readings. At the center of it all stood humanity, the natural variant that had somehow triggered these changes. On Earth, emergency meetings ran non-stop as leaders tried to understand what was happening. President Laura Wilson, a calm woman with steady hands and a practical mind, gathered her top advisors in the White House Situation Room. "What do we know for certain?" she asked Admiral Hayes, who had returned from Mars to report directly. "Not enough," Hayes admitted. "But the council is scared. For the first time since we met them, they're looking to us for answers instead of laughing at us." "Because they think we control what's happening?" asked Defense Secretary Joe Collins. Ambassador Foster, who joined by video link from Nexus Station, shook her head. "They know we don't control it. That's what frightens them. None of us knows what the precursors planned." President Wilson looked at each face around the table. "Then we need to find out, before panic spreads further." The president authorized a bold move, inviting the highest-ranking council members to Earth for direct talks. It would be the first time many of these beings had ever set foot on human soil. 3 days later, 5 senior council representatives arrived in Washington, D.C. High Elder Zareth led the delegation, along with leaders from the Vargon, Malosian, Threkian, and Isolari species. Gone was the condescension that had marked their earlier interactions with humans. Now they moved with the careful politeness of those facing an unknown but potentially dangerous situation. President Wilson greeted them in the East Room of the White House, a simple display of human hospitality replacing the grand ceremony that might have once seemed necessary to impress such visitors. "Welcome to Earth," she said simply. "We have much to discuss." Zareth, his forearms held close to his body in what humans now recognized as a posture of restraint, bowed slightly. "You must tell us what your species has done," he said, his voice urgent but not accusing. "What threshold have you crossed to activate the precursor systems?" "We've done nothing but exist as we are," President Wilson replied calmly. "Perhaps that's precisely what the precursors were waiting for." Dr. Rivera, who had been studying the Martian facility since its discovery, offered a theory. The precursors seemed to have been looking for balance. Each council species was engineered to excel in specific areas, but humanity evolved to be adaptable across all domains. Not specialized, but integrated. Not perfect at anything, Ambassador Foster added, but capable of everything. At the Kier President's request, Dr. Carter presented his findings about the genetic engineering of the council races. The alien representatives listened in silence, some showing signs of distress as they confronted the truth about their origins. "We were created as tools," Counselor Drex of the Vargons finally said, his armored exoskeleton clicking softly as he shifted position, specialized parts in some greater machine. "And we were what?" asked Hayes. "An afterthought? A control group in their experiment?" "Perhaps something more," suggested Dr. Carter. "The precursors may have recognized the limitations of extreme specialization. Humans may have been their hedge bet. a species allowed to develop naturally to see if balanced adaptability might ultimately prove more successful than engineered perfection. President Wilson seized on this idea. If that's true, then the precursors weren't abandoning their created species. They were waiting for humanity to develop our potential, yes, but not to replace you, to complement you. The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly as this possibility took root. After 2 days of discussions on Earth, President Wilson proposed a joint mission to investigate the largest activated precursor facility, located in deep space beyond Council territory. The team would include humans and representatives from each Council species, working together as equals for the first time. The journey took 3 weeks aboard the USS Defiance, now upgraded with some Council technology. Admiral Hayes commanded the mission personally, with teams of scientists from Earth and the Council working side by side to prepare for whatever they might find. The facility was massive, a structure larger than Earth's moon, shaped like an elongated diamond. It hung in space, gleaming with subtle lights that pulsed in patterns suggesting something alive rather than mechanical. As their ship approached, a docking bay opened silently, as if expecting them. "It knows we're here," murmured Lieutenant Bennett, who had been included in the mission after his success activating the Mars facility. Inside, they found corridors that adjusted their size and atmosphere as different species passed through them. The facility accommodated all of them perfectly, creating an environment where humans and Council members could work together without barriers. At the heart of the structure, they discovered a vast chamber containing what appeared to be an enormous, quantum computational matrix technology far beyond even the Council's understanding. As they entered, interfaces activated, responding to the neural patterns of all present species. A holographic image formed in the center of the chamber, not of a precursor as they had expected, but of a composite being that incorporated aspects of all present species, including human. "Integration protocol initiated," the entity announced, in a voice that somehow reached each of them in their native language. "The experiment concludes. Balance has been achieved." For hours, the entity explained what the precursors had done and why. The truth was both simpler and more profound than anyone had imagined. The precursors hadn't disappeared or abandoned their created species. They had been waiting for the missing piece in their grand design, naturally evolved humanity with its balanced capabilities and adaptability. "The specialized cannot thrive without the adaptable," the entity explained, "nor can the adaptable reach their full potential without the specialized. Together, they create something greater than either could alone." The Council species, each engineered for particular functions, had developed incredible capabilities in their specialized areas. But they had also developed limitations: rigid thinking, overspecialization, inability to adapt quickly to new challenges. Humans, evolving naturally, had developed balanced but less extreme capabilities across all domains. They weren't the best at anything, but they could do everything, and most importantly, they could adapt, innovate, and think in ways the specialized Council species could not. "We were never meant to stand apart," Ambassador Foster realized as the entity's explanation concluded. "Neither superior nor inferior to each other, we were meant to become something new together." In the days that followed, the entity helped them understand how to access and use the precursor technology. It wasn't designed to dominate or control, but to connect and enhance all intelligent life, creating a whole greater than the sum of its parts. The implications transformed galactic society. The Council was reorganized with humanity as full members, their perspective now valued precisely because it differed from the engineered consensus. Human adaptability complemented Council specialization, creating new possibilities in science, culture, and governance. 2 years after humans had first been mocked in the Council chambers, Admiral Hayes stood before the reformed Galactic Assembly as Earth's first full representative. The chamber that had once filled with laughter at humanity's expense now fell silent with respect as he began to speak. "We come neither as conquerors nor as supplicants," he declared. "We come as the voice that completes the chorus, the adaptable, balancing the specialized, the natural, complementing the designed. Today, Earth speaks not alone, but as part of something greater than any single species could achieve. Around the galaxy, the precursor technology continued to awaken, not as a threat but as a gift left by an ancient race that had seen further than any of them could have imagined. The future would belong neither to the specialized council races, nor to adaptable humans alone, but to what they could become together. The species that had once mocked humans now worked alongside them as equals. The humans who had once been dismissed as primitive now shared their unique perspective freely, and Earth, once a lonely voice in the vastness of space, now spoke as part of a greater harmony, exactly as the precursors had intended all along.